If you're really aiming for that next level of fluency, that point where you're not just getting the words, but you immediately grasp the intent, you have to look past simple vocabulary lists.
Yeah, absolutely.
The real linguistic power is in phrasal verbs. They are these complex ideas just compressed into simple, action-oriented phrases. So today, we're diving into 6 specific high-utility phrasal verbs from the source material you shared with us. These verbs are basically the linguistic architecture for talking about, well, capacity, uncertainty, and those big cognitive shifts.
Right.
Our mission here is to really master the nuanced functional meanings of these phrases, because you see them everywhere in professional and conversational English.
And mastering them is, I think, a genuine shortcut. For you, the learner, these 6 phrases aren't optional. They're markers of quick, high-speed communication.
How so?
Well, if you recognize them instantly, you don't have to break down a sentence grammatically. You just absorb the speaker's full emotional and strategic meaning in one go.
Okay, so to keep this analysis dynamic, let's track these 6 verbs through a single story. Let's imagine our friend, a marketing professional, telling a colleague about a massive presentation blunder.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. We'll use their conversation to frame our deep dive. Starting with that moment, the error becomes completely undeniable.
The point of no return, exactly. So the colleague is mid-presentation, everything feels fine, and then the realization hits. That sudden, often catastrophic shift from confusion to clarity is perfectly captured by our first verb, to dawn on somebody. And what's so fascinating about to dawn on is that it signifies instantaneous understanding.
It's not gradual.
No, not at all. It's a non-negotiable mental event. Something just becomes totally clear to you. It's not deduction. It's like a flash of insight. So in our story, the presentation has stalled. The presenter is sweating, trying to figure out why the numbers look so wrong. Suddenly, he leans over to his colleague and says something like, "I was arguing for a Q4 budget increase when it suddenly dawned on me that the slides were still showing last year's Q3 data." That's the exact context where this phrase just shines. Notice you could say, "I realized," but
It's not the same.
it's not. "Dawned on me" carries this extra weight of surprise, even inevitability. The information wasn't discovered through effort, it just appeared. It's a moment of truth, which in this case is pretty painful.
Okay, so from that sharp, definitive clarity, the knowledge that you just made a huge mistake, the mind immediately looks for an escape route.
Of course. And that brings us to a much softer, less committed mental state. To toy with the idea of something. This follows the stress so naturally. To toy with the idea is to consider an action, but, without any real seriousness or concrete plans. It's casual interest.
Or in this case, a flight of fancy to cope with the trauma.
Right.
So our presenter finishes the story about the slide error, and his colleague asks, "So how did you finish the meeting?"
The presenter just sighs and admits, "Honestly, for the first 10 minutes, I was seriously toying with the idea of just walking out and moving to a small, isolated farm in Vermont."
I love that. And it's a perfect contrast. The initial moment dawned on him, sharp, conclusive. The reaction is toying with the idea, soft and exploratory.
The phrasal verb itself tells you how serious he is.
Exactly. He isn't actually planning a move, he's just venting stress.
So here's where the narrative shifts from that internal stress to, well, actionable reality. The question is no longer about escaping, but about recovering, okay? And that demands an assessment of internal resources, which leads us to feel up to something. This phrase deals entirely with your internal capacity. It's asking, do you have the necessary energy, the courage, the mental reserves to actually engage with a task? It's a question of readiness. So the colleague who's listening to the story follows up and asks about the aftermath. So the presentation was salvaged, but how did the VP take it? Do you feel up to facing him in the hallway tomorrow morning? The beauty there is the nuance. You could use a simpler construction like, are you capable of?
Right.
But to feel up to specifically gets at the emotional or psychological willingness and energy, not just the physical ability.
This is more about your mental state.
Precisely. And like the source material implies, it's often used in the negative to set a boundary. I don't feel up to facing that level of critique right now. It signals a mental limitation. That makes a lot of sense. So we've moved from internal readiness to external strategy. If the presenter isn't feeling ready, what strategic dependencies did he rely on that failed him? That moves us to our fourth verb, to bank on something. To bank on something. This means to depend or rely on something happening, usually with a high degree of confidence or certainty. It's a powerful phrase in planning because it signals the central assumption of your whole strategy.
Couldn't we just use rely on? What's the subtle difference that banking on provides?
That's a critical distinction. While it means rely on, to bank on suggests a far greater stake, a higher expectation of certainty, like putting money in a bank.
There's an inherent risk, a huge professional risk. If you rely on something, it helps. If you bank on it, your entire structure collapses if that one thing fails. The colleague confirms this when they explain the error. I had to present early, and I was absolutely banking on the junior associate confirming the data set before the deck was finalized. Wow. So that's an admission of accountability and, well, misplaced faith. The source material cautions against this by giving the example, "Don't bank on the weather being good," showing that this phrase is often used when certainty is required, but not actually guaranteed.
The whole plan hinged on that one assumption, and it failed. So the clam collapsed, the reliance failed, and the presenter wasn't feeling up to the task, but somehow he finished the presentation. That takes us to how people deal with pure chaos. To muddle through something. I love this one. To muddle through something is wonderfully evocative, isn't it? It means managing to achieve a goal despite lacking skill or preparation or any clear plan.
It implies persistence, but a very messy outcome.
A successful but extremely messy outcome, yes.
It's the universal professional experience, I think. The colleague asks, "So how did you recover the numbers?" And the presenter just laughs and says, "We lost the internet. The numbers were wrong. The VP was furious. But honestly, we just kept talking and referencing old projects until the slide presentation ended. We literally just muddled through in the end."
The implication is not efficiency. It's survival. It's often used with this sense of humorous relief. It's acknowledging the sheer inefficiency of the whole process.
You got an acceptable outcome, but you wouldn't use it as a case study for success.
Definitely not. And now, the final lasting consequence of the error. Not the execution itself, but the social impact of the mistake. This is where reputation and memory meet. To never live something down. This captures that lasting social and emotional stain of an event. To never live something down means the embarrassment is so severe and so memorable that you will constantly be reminded of it in a social or professional setting.
Right. So the colleague closes the loop on the story by addressing that lasting consequence. Well, at least you got through it, but buddy, you're never going to live down showing Q3 data to the Q4 team. That's going straight into office lore. That's the perfect use case. It conveys a permanent, often exaggerated consequence, and it stands in stark contrast to muddling through.
How so?
Well, the presentation itself was salvaged, they muddled through, but the reputational stain, the fact that he'll never live it down, that's the true lasting legacy of the error. These verbs give you the full emotional spectrum of dealing with a professional failure.
Okay, so let's zoom back out. We've tracked a complete professional narrative arc using just 6 phrases. The sudden insight.
The desperate escape attempt. The internal assessment of energy.
You feel up to.
The failure of that critical reliance.
Icon.
Then the messy execution.
Muddled through.
And finally, the inevitable reputational consequence. Never live down.
The overall takeaway is efficiency. By recognizing these complex phrases as single, indivisible units of meaning, you instantly access the context, the tone, and the emotional weight of what the speaker is saying.
You get that immediate grasp of nuance.
You do. You get it in high-speed settings without having to process every single individual word. It's a game changer.
So as you step away from this deep dive, consider the communicative efficiency you just witnessed. If you want to talk about hesitant consideration, it takes 2 or 3 words to toy with.
Right. Now here's a final thought for you. What single standard English verb requires less effort, but conveys that exact same nuanced meaning of casual, non-serious interest? I mean, recognizing this kind of efficiency is really the difference between fluency and, well, true mastery.